We've all sat through jaw-dropping action scenes, the kind that make your pulse race and your breath catch. Explosions, high-speed pursuits, and impossible feats stitched together by movie magic. They look dangerous. But we know, deep down, it's choreography. Except, what if it wasn't? What if the danger was unscripted? What if the actor's fear wasn't a performance but panic? What if the line between fiction and reality dissolved on purpose? Hollywood thrives on illusion, but in some productions, that illusion collapsed. Directors pushed too far, actors bled for the role, safety measures were ignored or erased, and behind the curtain, chaos reigned real, painful, irreversible. These aren't urban legends, they're documented, buried in production logs, whispered in studio corridors, covered in legal disclaimers. Moments where cameras kept rolling even when someone should have yelled, "Cut." Some call it commitment, others call it recklessness. But no one denies the result, scenes that feel too intense to be fake because they weren't. This isn't a list of action films with great stunts. This is a descent into cinema that flirted with disaster. Films where the pursuit of realism spiraled into injury, trauma, even death. And in some cases, the cost of a single shot was a human life. Because sometimes, the most unforgettable scenes are the ones the studio didn't want you to know about. Let's peel back the illusion and expose 15 action movies where the danger wasn't faked, it was filmed. Fact Hasson, The Dark Knight, 2008. The truck stunt no one believed was real. You're watching a semi-truck flip vertically in a narrow street. Your brain tells you it's CGI. But it's not. Christopher Nolan had a vision. Make everything real, even if it terrified the studio. For one of The Dark Knight's most unforgettable moments, he ordered a full-scale truck to be flipped nose first onto solid pavement in the heart of Chicago. No miniatures, no VFX, just one massive, calculated act of destruction. Special effects supervisor Chris Corbould devised a hydraulic ram to punch upward through the vehicle's undercarriage, launching it into the air. But the margin for error was razor thin. If the force was misjudged, the truck could fall sideways into buildings or crush the stunt driver inside. They had one shot, one take, and it worked. The truck snapped skyward, pivoted midair, and slammed down like thunder. Crew members erupted in disbelief. The studio, watching remotely, didn't. They panicked because they had no idea Nolan had insisted on doing it for real. What became a promotional highlight was, in truth, a gamble hidden in plain sight. One where a human life hinged on a single explosion of physics. And Nolan wasn't alone. Other filmmakers would go even further in the name of authenticity. Fact 2, Mad Max, Fury Road, 2015, filmed on the edge of mayhem. George Miller didn't want spectacle. He wanted chaos you could feel. In Mad Max, Fury Road, every chase, crash, and airborne collision wasn't designed in a computer, it was orchestrated in the burning heat of the Namibian desert, with real machines and real stunt performers pushing themselves past the limit. More than 150 custom-built vehicles thundered across sandscapes at speeds that mocked safety protocols. Actors like Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron rode inches from death. In one sequence, a stuntwoman leapt between two moving rigs, wearing a restrictive costume and metal restraints. A split-second error would have ended her life under the wheels. Injury was constant: broken bones, concussions, near-fatal rollovers. Remote locations meant slow emergency response. Every day, someone bled for the camera. But the footage? Electric, visceral, alive. Audiences knew something was different because the danger wasn't pretend. It radiated through the frame. Miller once said, CGI couldn't match real-world weight. He proved it at a cost. And in another story, that cost wasn't bruises. It was a final breath caught on film. Fact 3, The Crow, 1994. When a movie set turned fatal, it should have been the role that launched Brandon Lee into stardom. Instead, it became a tragic end. During the filming of The Crow, a scene called for a simple gunshot. The weapon, meant to fire blanks, discharged a hidden projectile, left lodged in the barrel from an earlier take. No one caught it. When the trigger was pulled, the force was enough to tear through Brandon Lee's abdomen. The set froze. Paramedics were rushed in, but it was too late. The incident wasn't just a freak accident. It was a failure at every level. Safety protocols bypassed, an underqualified crew managing weapons, corners cut to save money, all for a few seconds of screen time. The most haunting part? They finished the film. Using body doubles, early CGI, and trick editing, the studio patched together Lee's remaining scenes. But one thing couldn't be faked: the weight of death that hung over every frame. Brandon Lee didn't die making a dangerous film. film. He died making a scene no one thought could hurt him. And in the next film, the danger wasn't a misfire, it was the jungle itself. Fact hash 4, Apocalypto, 2006. Survival wasn't part of the script. Mel Gibson didn't direct Apocalypto, he unleashed it. Filming in the dense rainforests of Mexico, far from controlled sound stages and safety supervisors, the production turned into something primal. Conditions were brutal, equipment shorted from humidity, medical supplies ran out, and the script became secondary to surviving the location. Rudy Youngblood, playing the film's lead, was required to jump off a waterfall over 90 feet high. He performed the stunt himself, slipped on impact, and vanished underwater. He later surfaced, dazed and concussed, bleeding from his scalp. Cameras kept rolling. Crew members were bitten by snakes. Others suffered dehydration or collapsed under the heat. Some scenes were filmed during tropical storms without warning. And through it all, Gibson pressed forward, determined to capture truth through discomfort. The pain is visible in every frame. There's no gloss, no polish, only raw physical struggle. Viewers praised the intensity, unaware they were watching more than just acting. On Apocalypto, survival wasn't a metaphor. It was the job, but sometimes it wasn't the wild that threatened actors, it was the script itself. Fact hash 5, Rambo, First Blood, 1982. Stallone's leap of faith and fracture. Sylvester Stallone didn't ask for a stunt double, he asked for a running start. In one of First Blood's defining moments, John Rambo hurls himself off a cliff, slamming through tree branches before hitting the ground. On paper, it was just another chase scene. On set, it became a physical gamble. Stallone insisted on performing the jump himself. The result? A brutal fall, a snapped rib, and a scream captured perfectly on camera because it was real. That take made it into the final cut. What wasn't shown? Stallone writhing off camera, barely able to breathe, finishing the day in agony. The production halted briefly. The studio suggested reshooting with a professional stuntman. Stallone refused. He believed the authenticity was worth it. The pain became part of Rambo's rage. Looking back, he called it stupid. But the footage? Iconic and unforgettable. And while Stallone chose to take the fall, others never had a chance to choose what was coming. Fact hash 6. The Man Who Killed Don Quixote, 2018. A dream that tried to kill its maker. Terry Gilliam didn't make a movie, he fought a storm. The Man Who Killed Don Quixote became one of cinema's most cursed productions, not because of the plot, but because of what filming demanded: endurance, delusion, and years of defeat. In 2000, the original shoot began in Spain. Within days, the skies opened. A flash flood drowned equipment, washed out locations, and rendered hours of footage useless. Fighter jets from a nearby base repeatedly disrupted audio. Then came the injuries. Lead actor Jean Rochefort developed a spinal condition after riding horses daily. He left the project. Insurance companies pulled out. Lawsuits piled up. The film was declared dead, but Gilliam resurrected it again and again. The version that finally released in 2018 was a stitched-together miracle, shot under tight budgets, with exhausted crew and haunting memories of what had been lost. Behind every frame is frustration, despair, and a director too stubborn to give up. In Hollywood, some dreams are abandoned. Gilliam's nearly destroyed him. And in the next story, the pain didn't come from nature or failure, it came from one wrong jump, caught forever on film. Fact hash 7. Mission Impossible Fallout, 2018. One jump, one break, one perfect shot. Tom Cruise doesn't believe in stunt doubles. He believes in consequences. While filming a rooftop chase for Mission Impossible Fallout, Cruise attempted a building-to-building leap. The plan: jump, grab the ledge, pull himself up. What happened? He slammed into the wall, shattered his ankle, and hobbled away, still in character. That take? It stayed in the final cut. The crew knew immediately something was wrong. His foot twisted unnaturally, but Cruise waved them off, limped through the scene, and collapsed only after clearing the frame. Production was shut down for weeks. Insurance threatened to pull out. The studio begged him to use stunt professionals moving forward. Cruise didn't just refuse, he escalated. He flew helicopters, dangled off cliffs, and continued to put his body on the line. To some, it's dedication. To others, self-endangerment. But one thing's clear: the moment audiences watched him crash into that wall, they felt something that no CGI can replicate: actual risk. And not all actors walked away from their moment of impact. Fact hash 8. Ben-Hur, 1959. Chariots, carnage, and a studio that stayed silent. The chariot race in Ben-Hur is the stuff of legend. Thundering hooves, splintered wheels, death inches away with every turn. What few know is how real it truly was. Filmed on a massive set in Rome, the sequence used live horses and custom chariots, racing at full speed around a curved, sand-filled track. Dozens of stuntmen trained for months, but even that wasn't enough. During one take, a rider was thrown. Accounts vary, but insiders whisper that he was trampled, killed instantly. MGM denied the incident. No official records exist, but footage from the sequence shows real falls, real injuries, and close calls too dangerous to fake. Charlton Heston nearly lost control of his team during the final lap. He held on by sheer strength and luck. The shot made the cut. The tension? Unmistakable. Ben-Hur won 11 Oscars, but its triumph may have been paved with silence, and silence was something the next film never got. The screams were too real. Fact #9, Roar, 1981, a family film that became a bloodbath. They said it was about harmony between humans and animals. What they made was chaos on camera. Roar, the 1981 brainchild of Noel Marshall and Tippi Hedren, featured more than 100 untrained big cats, lions, tigers, leopards, roaming freely on set. What was pitched as a family adventure turned into one of the most dangerous film shoots ever recorded. No special effects, no cages, just real predators and a crew that bled for their art. Cinematographer Jan de Bont had his scalp torn open. Tippi Hedren was clawed across the face. Her daughter, Melanie Griffith, needed facial surgery after being mauled. Noel Marshall himself was bitten so many times he developed infections that nearly ended his life. And still, they kept filming. Insurance companies abandoned the project. The film was shot over a decade, plagued by injury, loss, and unrelenting danger. Some scenes in the final cut include actual attacks. No one yelled cut because the crew was too busy surviving. Roar is a film about coexisting with nature, but what it captured was nature, unfiltered, and humans, woefully unprepared. And while these beasts had claws, the next story involves something colder, quieter, and just as deadly. Fact #0, Titanic, 1997, hypothermia in every take. James Cameron didn't want his actors to pretend to be cold. He made them cold. To capture the infamous sinking of the Titanic, the director filled a massive tank with ice-cold water and plunged his cast into it over and over again. The breath you see fogging the air, it's not makeup. That's genuine physical shock. Kate Winslet spent hours submerged in freezing conditions. At one point, her coat got caught underwater, and she barely escaped drowning. She later admitted she had no idea how close she came to losing consciousness. Leonardo DiCaprio fared better, but reportedly begged for a temperature increase. The crew refused. Extras developed pneumonia. Some were hospitalized. One prankster laced the catering with PCP, sending dozens of crew into hallucinations mid-shoot. Cameron believed the suffering made the scene honest, and it did at a cost. The cold in the movie is haunting because it was real, and for many involved, the memory of that set still sends chills. But freezing water wasn't the only element weaponized in the name of cinema. In the next film, the danger was speed, and it came straight at the lens. Fact #1, Hardcore Henry, 2015. First-person action. Zero protection. Hardcore Henry wasn't shot like a movie. It was experienced like a video game with consequences. Filmed entirely in first person, the movie put the camera literally on the actor's face. Every punch, explosion, and fall had to be timed not just for action, but for the angle of the lens strapped to the stuntman's head. There were no camera operators, no dolly tracks, just raw motion, with the actor performing acrobatics while filming himself in real time. In one scene, he dives through a moving bus window, rolls over a car, and crashes into a concrete slab. There was no padding. He got up and did it again. The GoPro occasionally dislodged mid-stunt, turning simple mistakes into serious hazards. One slip sent the camera flying into the actor's jaw, knocking him back mid-chase. But the shot stayed. Hardcore Henry feels dizzying, intense, unfiltered because it was. And while audiences debated whether the gimmick worked, no one denied the level of physical commitment involved. It wasn't cinematography. It was survival cam. And for the next film on our list, cameras weren't the danger. Guns were. Fact #2, El Mariachi, 1992, shot on the streets. Literally, Robert Rodriguez didn't break the rules of filmmaking. He ignored them completely. El Mariachi, filmed on a $7,000 budget, was shot without permits, without stunt coordinators, and most dangerously, without prop guns. The weapons, real. The people in the background, real civilian. In one scene, a shootout erupts in a marketplace. Locals thought it was a real attack. Panic broke out. Someone called the police. Officers arrived with guns drawn, nearly opening fire on the cast and crew. Rodriguez had no insurance, no legal clearance. He and his team dodged trouble daily, filming guerrilla style in the streets of Ciudad Acuña. Actors pointed guns directly at each other, often inches from their faces. Blank rounds were fired without proper safety checks. The result was raw, electric, and totally unrepeatable. The film earned Rodriguez a career but nearly cost him his freedom. Sometimes, ambition outruns caution. In El Mariachi, it outran law enforcement, and in the next production, ambition meant dragging something massive not across borders, but over a mountain. Fact Hasson 3, Fitzcarraldo, 1982, the ship that broke the crew. Werner Herzog didn't simulate madness. He orchestrated it. In Fitzcarraldo, the story follows a man dragging a steamship over a mountain. Most directors would use models or visual effect. Herzog decided to do it for real, hauling a 320-ton vessel up a muddy hill in the Amazon, using ropes, manpower, and stubbornness. The result wasn't just grueling, it was dangerous. Crew members suffered crushed limbs and infections. A plane crash supporting the production killed several people. The ship nearly slid backward multiple times, threatening to crush those below. Locals were horrified. Several indigenous workers quit mid-project, calling the effort cursed. When asked why he insisted on doing it this way, Herzog replied, "To match the madness of the character, we had to go mad ourselves, and that madness seeps into every frame." The tension isn't just acted, it's felt, because the danger wasn't imagined. It was looming off camera, every single day. And if dragging a ship over a mountain sounds impossible, wait until you hear what they filmed in traffic. Fact Hasson 4, The French Connection, 1971. The chase that broke the law. Some chase scenes are choreographed. This one broke traffic laws. In The French Connection, Gene Hackman's character speeds through Brooklyn beneath an elevated train, swerving past real cars and pedestrians. No permits, no closed streets. Just a camera bolted to the bumper and a driver with nerves of steel. Director William Friedkin was fed up with artificial action. He wanted raw chaos, and he got it. The stunt driver tore through live traffic. At one point, he clipped a civilian's car. That crash? Unplanned. It's in the final cut. The woman nearly hit crossing the street, not an extra. She had no idea she was in a movie. Police showed up later, threatening charges. The studio covered it up. But Friedkin, years later, admitted it was reckless and exactly why it worked. Sometimes, the greatest scenes come at the highest cost. Not just to the crew, but to the people who didn't even agree to be in the film. And yet, there's one film where no one agreed. Especially not the child star who aged a decade during the shoot. Fact Hasson 5, Come and See, 1985, The War Was Real. There are war movies. Then there's Come and See, a film so harrowing, even its crew never fully recovered. Directed by Elim Klimov in Soviet Belarus, the film follows a teenage boy's descent into the horrors of Nazi occupation. But this wasn't make-believe. The lead actor, Alexei Kravchenko, was subjected to real explosions, live ammunition, and genuine psychological trauma. He was 14. The film's realism came from stripping away all protection. Dirt wasn't staged. Screams weren't rehearsed. In one scene, the boy breaks down sobbing because the flames, the suffocation, and the corpses felt real. Kravchenko's hair turned gray during filming. His face, gaunt and hollow, aged before the camera. He later said he remembered very little. His mind shut down to cope. Come and See isn't violent by Hollywood standards, but its images are unforgettable because they were built on lived suffering. The line between cinema and reality, gone. And just when you thought it couldn't get more disturbing, there's one final story that never belonged on a screen. Bonus fact, Game of Death, 1978. The scene that used a real corpse. Some productions cross ethical lines. This one erased them completely. Bruce Lee died before he could finish Game of Death, but the studio wasn't ready to bury the project or him. So, they did the unthinkable. They hired stand-ins who barely resembled Lee. They reused old footage. They digitally inserted his face using primitive technology. But the most horrifying choice? They used real footage from his actual funeral. In a key scene, Lee's character lies in an open casket. The shot isn't staged. That's Bruce Lee's real body, makeup still fresh, eyes closed. His death, immortalized not as tribute but as content. Audiences were stunned. Many didn't know the truth at the time. When it emerged, the backlash was immediate. Critics called it macabre, disrespectful, a violation of basic human dignity. Yet the film made money. Curiosity trumped outrage. And for decades, the image of Bruce Lee's final moments lived on screen, not in reverence, but in exploitation. This wasn't method acting. This was monetized mortality. Where do we draw the line? Is realism worth broken bones, trauma, or even death? Or have we mistaken suffering for storytelling? In a world where anything can be faked, why are we still chasing danger? Tell us, which of these films pushed too far? And which scene, no matter the cost, was worth it?